Welcome to the Embodiment Conference. My name oh, it's just not going to work at all. Never accept a dare from Mark Walsh. Welcome to the Embodiment Conference. My name is Leslie Kaminoff, and you may know me as the co-author of the international bestseller, Yoga Anatomy. But I'm also the co-founder of yogaanatomy.net. Now, that's a platform we built 11 years ago where we offer online courses and in-depth anatomy modules that support teachers, teacher trainings, and students all over the world. So that's why we are thrilled to be sponsoring all the incredible sessions here on the Yoga channel, including my own. And if you feel a connection with the way I teach, I have some great news for you. We are extending scholarships to all members of the Embodiment Conference. And you can find that scholarship info and links to yogaanatomy.net in the description for this presentation and in the show notes. In the meantime, enjoy your body, enjoy your breath, and enjoy your conference. And I'll see you online.
Thank you very much for that. So we're going to be doing Asana for Immunity with Lisa Peterson. I don't know why I keep thinking that. Lisa has been sharing the art of teaching yoga and somatics for 2 decades. She is internationally known for her integrity, clarity, and presence. Her style is personable and enriched by a deep understanding of anatomy, alignment, and movement patterns. She's passionate about finding the balance between being and doing, movement and stillness, strength and fluidity, discipline and freedom. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you. And this is your last session, so congratulations, Oscar, on making it this far. So morning, folks. I am super touched to see so many names and faces that I know from all over the world and so many new names and faces. So welcome. Welcome to this class. And first off, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to everybody at the Embodiment Conference for making such a rich learning resource available for all of us. They've done an amazing job, and I'm really happy to be part of this team. And the body of work that I'd like to present to you today was co-developed by Donna Farry and I. So maybe 10 years ago, we took 6 different fluids and we mapped their rhythms and their flows. We researched them, and then we mapped all of that research onto movement in general and asana in particular. So what I'd like to share with you today is kind of a small snippet of my research on lymph and why lymph might be useful. So our menu is pretty much, I'm going to talk for 10-15 minutes. I'll keep it as short as I can, show you some pretty pictures for those of you that are more visual learners. Then we'll do a breathing inquiry. Then we'll do a little bit of warm up. There will be some dancing in there. And then we will do a little bit of asana and kind of vinyasa, and then back to rest. So that's what's on offer. You will need a mat and a blanket. So it's quite prop light. And you may have seen in the chat in the beginning, there is a playlist that goes with this class. And so if you could have your music device kind of handy, I'll let you know when to start that playlist so that we can kind of all get going on the same foot. Yeah. And just one last kind of proviso, anything I offer is an offering. Find your flow within my flow. What I'm doing is kind of seeding some threads, and really the process of embodiment is what you weave together with those threads. So it's really not about the ideas, it's about how you take the ideas and what makes sense to you. So even if you just get one idea, one seed that gets planted today, I would be super excited about that. Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen and talk just for a couple of minutes. So what is lymph, since that's our topic? Lymph is basically the fluid of our immune system. And in Ayurveda, they call it longevity juice. So that should give us some kind of clues as to why it might be interesting to study lymph. So the fluid of our immune system, and of course our immune system has other parts. So we have tonsils and thymus, we have our spleen, we have our bone marrow. There's lots of elements to our immune system. And the really interesting thing about lymph that I found when I started researching it is that it has no pump. Now, just bear with me. We're going away from the idea that the heart is a pump. But just for simplicity's sake, let's say there is no equivalent of the central mechanism of the heart in the lymph. And yet, about 3 liters of lymph get moved through your body every day. So how does lymph move? Lymph moves through moving, what we call the use it or lose it principle. And lymph moves when we're not moving through breathing. So those are 2 territories that are very close to most yogis' hearts. And the other interesting thing is that lymph moves from periphery to center. So bear with me for a moment. Take one hand out and imagine, just slide your one hand from your fingers all the way up your arm, as if you're putting on one of those long, luscious pairs of ladies' gloves that they wear with ball gowns. And map your way from your periphery, out your extremities of you, towards your center. And then try that with the other arm. Periphery to center. So I'm going to be using this language a little bit through the conference. Periphery to center. And then do the same thing. Pick a leg and go from your foot, as if you're putting on a long pair of tight stockings, all the way up. All the way up. And then the same thing on the other leg. So we're mapping the flow of lymph here, periphery to center. And we'll talk a little bit about what it does when it gets to various places in the center. Okay. So lymph follows the veins, particularly under the skin, and around the midsection of the body, it follows the arteries. So it's very close to lots of other flowing systems in the body. And when I studied with Bonnie Bainbridge, she used to say that all the fluids in the body are one fluid, basically water, which is why it's so important we stay hydrated. And that to that one fluid, its composition changes by things getting added and subtracted. And that's what gives us the different fluids in the body. So if we look, for example, at lymph, lymph is actually plasma, which is the clear part of blood, plasma that seeps from the blood capillaries, these are capillaries here, seeping into the interstitial spaces, so it becomes interstitial fluid. And basically, interstitial fluid is the sea that the cells live in. It's the ocean of the cells. And from interstitial fluid then, it seeps into these finger-like projections, which are the end of the lymph channels. They're about 4 to 6 times bigger than a capillary, and we know capillaries are tiny. And once the plasma, which has become interstitial fluid, enters into the lymph channels, it becomes lymph. And then it gets transformed again. And so on with all of the fluids in the body, which is why our fluid system can be so beautiful to learn about. Now, along the way, these lymph channels have valves. And why might they have valves? So that we don't have backflow. Anywhere we have valves, we have backflow, and we don't have backflow. And I realized this is actually Leslie doing the rest of the pose that you didn't see at the beginning of his little piece. So this is from Yoga Anatomy. Thank you, Leslie. And along its path to where lymph sort of gets recycled, let's say spleen or heart, lymph can travel through up to 500 nodes. So this is a lymph node. And if you've ever had a swelling in the armpit or the groin, you know what your lymph nodes are about. And the nodes are basically there to filter and trap foreign particles. They're full of B cells and T cells and white blood cells and other immunity cells. They're also got something called macrophages, which is Greek for big eaters. And they also sit in the bloodstream, if you like miniature Pac-Men, just waiting to gobble up all of the invaders that they find as they move through the bloodstream. So lymph moves through nodes. And about 50% of those nodes are in the abdominal cavity around the organs. So really the beating, thriving heart of us, the core of us, the part of us without which we can't survive, is the organ body. So it makes sense that 50% of the nodes would be in this area. Another 30% is in the head and the neck. And if you turn your head and slide your hand very lightly from the back of the ear just down to above your clavicles, and you might imagine your fingers sort of sinking down into the region subclavian, the region just below the clavicles. You do this very lightly. You're just stretching out the lymphatic channels. So this is the sort of touch that the lymphatic drainage people use, very light. So another 30% of the nodes in the head and the neck. We know there are nodes in the groin. They're really all over the body, but there's a collection of them in the groin, in the armpit, in the breast. And along its route, lymph passes through lots of very specific collection and drainage points. And the main grand central station, if you like, for the whole lower body is something called the cisterna chyli. Now, I'm probably mangling the pronunciation, so forgive me if you're an anatomy purist. But just underneath the diaphragm, which is where it gets interesting for us, is this main collection point for the whole lower body called the cisterna chyli, just here. Doesn't look like much, I have to say. And just above that region is your diaphragm. So here's the double dome. This is from Netter. Double dome of your diaphragm. So tethered to the heart above, tethered to all of the organs below. And from the cisterna chyli, a long thoracic duct extends upwards, sort of paralleling the trajectory of the spine. And that helps in some ways keep a sort of spinal integrity. So I got really excited about this when I first learned. Let me show you another slide which might help. This is from a book for osteopaths. You can see here the crura, these long handlebars of the diaphragm, and how close they are to the nodes. So basically, if your diaphragm is not free to move, as many of our diaphragms aren't, the lymph system will be impeded. Not only the lymph, but peritoneal flow, blood flow, pleural flow. The diaphragm is really central to the fluid flows in the body. And if it is not free to move, then less lymph will be pumped. In fact, they've done some studies where they have mapped the amount of air inspired and the amount of lymph pumped. And the better, the more efficient our breathing is, the more lymph travels through the body. And remember, when we're moving, lymph gets channeled through movement, through muscular pumps and myofascial continuities. But when we're not moving, the breath is the thing that moves this part of our immune system. And I just found that fascinating and useful and practical, because obviously moving and breathing are two territories that are so dear to yogis and so known to us. So just a short recap. How does lymph move? Movement in general, it's the use it or lose it principle. We know that when we don't move enough, we get stagnant flows, odemas, lymphodemas. And random fact of the day that you might want to remember, the kinesiotapes that physical and physiotherapists use to stimulate lymph were actually made by researching giraffe skin, because giraffes have the longest limbs in the world and they have no oedema, no lymphedema, no swelling. It's absolutely incredible. So move to move your lymph. It's channeled specifically by the action of what we used to call muscles, and now we're calling myofascial continuities. Bit of a mouthful, but the whole continuum of bone to ligament to tendon to muscle to fascia. So the calf pump is one example, and we're going to be working with that today specifically. Lymph is channeled through the movement of the diaphragm and the ribs. And there's other stuff as well. I've distilled it down just for today's session. And just as an aside, lymph is channeled by manual therapy. So if you do something like daily abhyanga or a daily Ayurvedic massage or any form of massage, you will be going a long way to improving your immunity. And then aquatherapy, just as a side note, and the effect of water pressure, moving underwater, moving in water, is also proven to help lymph. And they know this because they've been working with people that have had cancers, all kinds of conditions where the lymph system has really been called into play. Okay. So if the words are not for you, then just let the words go over your head. I'm kind of trying to set the stage for the experience. But if you are a kinesthetist, as I am in many ways, a kinesthetic learner, don't worry too much about the words. Just take in the pretty pictures. So I would like to suggest that the qualities that lymph offer us in movement include the following: clarity, directedness in movement, focus, a sort of incisiveness. And indeed, they say that this is a woman with a Tibetan slingshot way up in the Tibetan plateau, that games that involve things like slingshots, they really can help stimulate lymph. Something that has focus, clarity, even a game of darts, very lymphatic. And I'd also like to suggest that we can get at lymph through patterns of what we call reach. So if you've been studying any developmental work, Bonnie or Donna or any of the masters of this work, yield becomes reach, becomes pull. So we're going to be playing with patterns of reach today. And I'd like to also have us bear in the background that I think, in my experience, lymph can be directed and clear and focused without getting hard. And that's why I really like to call on it in terms of movement. It doesn't have to get hard. I just love this fisherman casting his net. It's so clear, so direct, but there's some beautiful soft lines through the movement. One more possibility is that lymph can help us with what I call a crystallization of form, or form arising from an ocean of possibilities. And if you think about what asana is, it is simply a shapes that were designed for us to move our energy or our prana. So of all the ocean of possibilities of form, what we choose to do in our yoga practice offers us clarity, it's a choice. So rather than maybe a chaotic flow, this is very synovial for me, shoes outside a temple in India, lymph might offer us, again, specificity within possibilities. And I really think that's what a practice of asana is. And then one final picture and one final seed for now is that in my experience and the experience of the students I have shared this with, lymph can help us with both our physical and our psychological defenses. So it might offer us a sense of standing in our own power, but in a contained way. It might offer us better boundaries if we are someone who tends to be quite susceptible to the world. Better containment, but again, without a sense of hardening. And that's why I chose this particular picture, little Irish traveler girl. I really resonate with her poise, her expression, and the solidity, the standing on her own 2 feet and in her own power that she also portrays. I think, yes, let's just look at one more briefly before we map this into movement and experience. And remember, the map is never the territory. The words can never be the embodiment, but it's good to have some threads. So how can we help with yoga? We can balance the rhythm and the pace of how we move. We can cultivate some of these qualities that I've been suggesting as a formal intention within our asana practice. We can work with the extremities and patterns of reach, which we'll do today. We can release and balance the diaphragm. We can free the rib cage. And just because I'm a water girl, I had to add this in, moving underwater and in water again. Really useful for lymph. Okay. I am going to pause the PowerPoint. And we're going to travel into experiencing now. So what I would invite you to do is to take a blanket and put it on half of your mat. So it's going to be the head to tail half. And if you would have your music device handy, that would be great. I'll tell you in a moment when to cue your music. And then settle yourself down into some form of lying on your back. So knees bent or legs long. And breathe in, and as you breathe out, just let yourself receive the floor. How do you give weight? How do you receive support from that weight giving? And if you have another strategy for arriving onto the mat or into your body, then using that strategy. And then place your hands on your belly, maybe fingers touching. And take a couple of abdominal breaths. So breathing into the belly. And then if you put the heels of your hands on your as is, your two sticky out hip bones in the front, and your middle fingers touching, at the end of your exhalation, could you pull back right at the place where your middle fingers are touching? This is just one of the many ways of engaging what I call your inner corset, your deep core muscles, one of them, your TA. And what would it be like now as you breathe to make it a little bit more of a diaphragmatic breath? And in a diaphragmatic breath, the diaphragm moves down, but it meets a little bit of resistance from the inner corset. And then the second stage is that the ribs flare. So on the inhale, diaphragm moves down, but now meets a little resistance from your inner corset. Second stage of that is that the ribs flare. And then you breathe out. And you may wish to place your hands further up your body now on the base of your ribs. And see what it would be like to contain the belly region more, so less abdominal. And to open the rib cage, the double domed parachute, jellyfish of your diaphragm. Diaphragmatic breathing, also called thoracodiaphragmatic breathing. And just get a sense of how it's different. How is that breathing different to belly breathing? Does it recruit a different part of you? And then let that go in your own time. And if you have your music device handy, whatever you're playing on, I'll give you a moment to get your device. I'm going to take mine out. And in order for us to be able to sync the soundtracks a little bit, I'm going to suggest that I count 5 to 1 and then I'll say play. So let's try that together. If you have your music device handy, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and play. So the movement we're going to start with here is a movement called pulsing. And of all the things you learned today, it might be the most important movement. So I'm going to start with one leg long and one knee bent. And I'm going to send a gentle wave through the body. So I'm using my calf pump, among other things. So just try this on for size. We've about 6 minutes of this. So you've really got some time to settle in. One leg long, one knee bent. Little wave through the body that stimulates not only the lymph, but all the fluids. Just get a rhythm going that feels sustainable for you. And then change legs. So you've got a little bit of help from pushing with the bent leg foot and a little bit of help from the long leg heel. Can you let go in your belly, in your chest, in your jaw? Can this pulsing arrive and move all the way up to your brain? And then pause for a moment, just take that in, whatever the resonance may be, glowing or tingling or humming. What do you feel? What's your experience? And then bend both knees. And what I love about this movement is that anybody can do it. Not everybody's favorite movement in the beginning. But once you get to know it, it's a firm friend. We're going to add in arms now, just loosely held towards the ceiling, receiving that flow. This may be easier or harder for you. Just get a sense of what's appropriate and just stay loose, loosey, juicy, goosey, as loose as you can. And then if you bring one set of fingers to your sternum, opening up the other arm to the side, following it with the head, and then back to center. Play with that now, rolling, rotating the head, opening up one arm at the same time as you move. Keep the movement going. Just keep jiggling. Opening on the other side. You can also try arms overhead, leaving them there or having them travel. pulsing when you want to pulse and pausing when you want to pause. So again, your flow within my flow, your rhythms within what's being offered. As you pause, when you pause, finding and feeling the resonance, the glowing, the tingling, the humming, prana moving through the body. And if you haven't paused, pausing now. Just listening to the resonance. Noticing if your breathing has shifted or changed. Your relationship to the ground might be a little different. And when you're ready, make a transition to tabletop. And if your knees are particularly sensitive, you might want to fold your blanket and put it underneath your knees. And I'm going to show you this next set of movements. There's 3 different things that we're going to do. One is bouncing with a long leg, and you can hear, if you have the soundtrack on, you can hear the rhythm of the music has changed. We're going to play with bouncing with a long leg. We're going to play with bouncing with a short leg with the knee tucked, foot tucked under. And the third thing we're going to do is knee out, knee middle, knee in, and flat. Knee out, knee middle, knee in, and flat. Yeah? So let's start with the long leg. Again, here we are in our calf pump. And just find a rhythm that feels good. And you find a continuity from your foot to your knee, to your hip, to your pelvis, to your spine. And when you've got a clarity there with the long leg, then bring the knee in. And I'm on a 2 rhythm bounce here. Figure out what is best for you. Might even make you smile, God forbid, of a Saturday morning. And then try knee out, middle, in, and flat. Out, middle, in, and flat. Out, middle, in, and flat. My buddy Christine, who's on this call, taught me this. And flat. Out, middle, in, and flat. One more. Out, middle, in, and flat. Try the other leg. And you might have a different relationship of this foot knee into your pelvis, into your spine. Just see what you've got. What kind of pulsing, bouncing momentum, rhythm can you find here? And then knee bent. Leg long, knee bent. Long, continuity, integration in both. Okay, we're going to transition into the next movement. Out, middle, in, flat. Out, middle, in, flat. And just have some fun with it. If it's not for you, if it's not for your knees, then find another movement that works. What's important is you move. And you have a little bit of fun along the way. Last one. Middle, in, flat. On to hands and knees now. And let's just change it up a little bit, circling through your diaphragm. Good. And then find your way towards standing. And you might want to move your mat for this next bit. You need a little bit of space. I forgot to tell you in the beginning, my apologies. This is a class where space is useful. And you'll hear the rhythms, the tones, the pace change again. So this is about 3 minutes of kind of free flow. Some of you might know that Ireland is back in 6 weeks of lockdown. So one of the things that we're doing here is dancing every day. So just move for the pleasure of movement, for the joy of having a body that can move and breathe and be. Again, remember the use it or lose it principle. Doesn't really matter how you move, it just matters that you move. Awesome. So again, finding your own rhythms. It's really important in all the movement you do. Your rhythms within what you need. You might be aware of your breathing, your feet, heat, tingling, whatever happens when you move yourself. You hear the music play again, change again. And start to walk around the room. And as you walk, clock your surroundings. Become aware of what's the walls, the furniture. Maybe you're outside today. But get a sense of you as a contained entity in the physical container of your skin and where your skin suit meets the room. What is your boundary? And maybe you can feel your feet or the floor. And then stop. Change direction. And before you change direction, know where you're going to go. So be decisive. Stop. Change direction. Stop. Change direction. Know where you're going to go. Find your directedness, your clarity. And then pause and find a form, any form. I call this Karate Kid. Crystallize your form and then let it go. Find a form, any shape, and let it go. Find a form, any form. Let it become another form and let it go. Clear. How much clarity can you bring to those forms? And then come back to your mat. Roll it back out again. And let's try that same clarity of form within a little bit of asana, just a little bit. So I'm going to invite you to stand on your right leg and bring your left foot into tree. We're going to go tree to lunge in a moment, but can you know where you're going as you step backwards? Tree to lunge. Okay, back to tree. We're going to do that 2 more times. Tree to lunge. Know where you're going as you carve your way through space. Back to tree. 1 more time, back in the lunge. Drop the knee this time, travel back and forth a few times. Nice and easy, easing your way through your hips. Coming up into some form of crescent moon. I only have limited shoulder movement on one arm at the moment, so you use 2 arms. Crescent moon. And then hands in prayer. You're going to bring your left hand to the outside of the right knee. Inhaling, lengthening head to tail. Exhaling, turning from your diaphragm. 2 more. Inhaling, lengthening head to tail. Exhale, turning from your diaphragm. Last one. Inhale, lengthen head to tail. Exhale, turn. Back down into the lunge. Back through dog. And we step back on the left. So you're going to step forward on your left into the lunge. And in a moment, straight back up into tree. Three trees here. Tree to lunge. Second side. To tree. To lunge. 1 more. Know where you're going. Direction in space. Tree to lunge. Drop the back knee. And back and forth. Again, easing out into what you're doing. And up into crescent moon with both arms. Namaste. Right elbow outside. Left knee. 3 breaths. Inhaling, lengthening head to tail. Exhaling, turning, pausing, and stabilizing. 2 more breaths in your own time. Good. Turning down, back into the lunge, back into dog. You step back on the right, so you're going to step forward on the right, forward on the left, and up into tree. You can do it. Straight up. Well done. And then take the hands in prayer. Good. 2 feet down, back into your Tadasana. And just pause. Noticing you, your ability to stand on your own 2 feet. The sense of the space around you, where you meet the floor and where you meet the space. And maybe this beautiful horizontal quality of your diaphragm, this horizontal membrane that gives so much support. Every breath changes our relationship to space. Every breath changes us. And just be with that now for the next 30 seconds. Maybe you can feel the imprint of your practice, the resonance. How some of those qualities change how you move or feel about yourself and your movement. And then bring yourself back down into sitting. And as you sit, again, finding the relationship, thoracic diaphragm to what's above, thoracic diaphragm to what's below. Your skin suit. And where your skin suit meets the room and you meet it. And how each breath changes the shape of that skin suit, changes the shape of you. And just letting these words flow over you. Rilke, translated by Anita Barrows and Joanna Macy. I believe in all that has never yet been spoken. I want to free what waits within me so that what no one has dared to wish for may for once spring clear without my contriving. If this is arrogant, God, forgive me, but this is what I need to say. May what I do flow from me like a river, no forcing and no holding back, the way it is with children. Then, in these swelling and ebbing currents, these deepening tides moving out, returning, I will sing you as no one ever has, streaming through widening channels into the open sea. May what I do flow from me like a river. No forcing and no holding back. The way it is with children. So as you tune into yourself, maybe noticing of this short class, what is the one thing that you have learned? Maybe one seed that has been planted that may grow. Something that feels significant to your embodiment, your journey. And then in your own time, floating the arms all the way up and out to the side to where the palms touch. Bringing them back down to the heart center and just touching the thumbs into the heart center. Arms, hands here as an expression of the heart and the lungs. In deepest and most sincere gratitude to everybody who is making the world a more embodied place. Namaste, and thank you so much for class. It's been wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was a really beautiful class. Just what I needed for a Saturday morning. If you want
So the name of the poem, because I know we will ask, it has a long name. I believe in all that has never yet been spoken, by Rilke. I don't know what period, what year he wrote it.
Great. So if you want
So
to...
Oscar, I'm not sure on your timings, what we have left.
We're just coming up to the end.
We need to I can't hear you yet.
Sorry? Can you hear me? I think Lisa's lost her sound. Yeah, I thought so. So yeah, we're just coming up to the end. I'm afraid we're on our final few minutes. Just if you can put your thank yous into the chat for Lisa. I don't think she can hear us.
I can.
Oh, you can hear us now. Great. Okay, great. So thank you so much for that class. That was such a beautiful class. Really just woke me up in such a gentle and deep way. So I really appreciate that. And I think everyone else here is really, really resonating with what you were offering us today. So thank you so much, Lisa. We'll come back to you right at the end for your final embodiment tip. If you want to keep connecting with people who have been in this session or people who've been in other sessions to find out more about what's been going on, you can do that in the Facebook group, or you can do that via our coffee break sessions, which are in between sessions. If you want to own this library so that you can have time to process and digest the information, which is really the next logical step if you're enjoying what you're finding here, you can do that. You can buy it before the conference ends at 50% off. It goes to double the price after the conference ends. You get learning lists which take you progressively and logically through the material, and also get the audio only formats, which mean that you can do other stuff while you're listening to the material that's in here. That's really all the announcements. So back to you, Lisa, for your final tip before we end.
So I think at this time, what is really useful is to use the breath to stay in the present, because the only place that the breath exists is in the present moment. The breath can't exist in the past or the future. So the minute we do something so simple and yet so exquisitely profound as noticing the breath in the moment, it takes us directly into the present. So that is my wish for you for this period, that you join with the breath and join with yourself.
Thank you so much. That was Lisa Peterson with Asana for Immunity. Thank you all for coming. Her website details are in the chat if you'd like to connect with her after this. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.